Hello, Android 2 students, and welcome back. This is just a really quick video to talk briefly about some of the changes that you will need to make for the flag quiz project for your assignment. If you've read through the assignment, you know that you're to take this project and modify it so that instead of displaying flags and quizzing users over which countries correspond to the flags, we're to modify it and show the user little snippets of programming code. I thought this would be fun, and since we're programmers here, little snippets of programming code, like for example, like a little piece of C++ programming, and then offer them a quiz. Which programming language are you looking at? C++, Java, etc. So it's the same exact concept, but instead of flags, using an image that represents programming code. So in the assignments folder, you will find 4 hints that really point you in the right direction. The first of which is to obtain pictures of programming code, and this could be you typing it out, taking little snippets of things online, whatever you want. Just make sure that it's in the file format described in the assignments folder so that it's compatible with Android. And the other thing is, after you get those images, we need to come over here to the Assets folder. Currently, the Assets folder contains all of the different flag images. But in addition to that, we have this organization where they're inside of folders that correspond to regions. So that's a level of complexity we're not going to have in our programming code. I mean, you could go to that level, but you'd need an awful lot of programming pictures, and we're not going to do that. So we're just going to have it in one folder, programming languages or something like that. So that actually gets rid of a little bit of complexity of the program by doing so. It's all just going to be in one particular folder, and you'll see in the hints then that you'll have to make sure to modify the, I believe it's the preferences, that you need to, make sure that the user is not able to go in and select regions anymore. The user should be able to select how many buttons they have, guess choices, as they did on the flag quiz, but they should not be able to select by region anymore. If you want to do that, you can, but it's an awful lot more work on you. So the expectation is just a folder for programming languages. And honestly, that's the bulk of the work of the program, because there won't be that many changes. I wanted to share with you that, you might be looking at a lot of this code and feeling overwhelmed, because Dytel's book really deep dives into a lot of Java code. And the expectation is that you'll read the chapter, have a good grasp of it, but not necessarily that you're going to be able to, drill down to every single line of code. It's just a bit much for that. But what you do want to do is have a grasp of what's going on, what the different methods are for, and try to familiarize yourself with the Java code. The chapter does do a good job of describing the different pieces, even though there is a lot going on here. So, a lot of times if you post-graduation do get a job in the programming field, you won't be working by yourself, and you won't be necessarily working on your own piece of code. That's actually not that usual that you would do. Instead, a lot of times you'll work collaboratively on a larger piece of code, such as this, where you don't necessarily master every line of code and understand every line of code, but you might be asked to modify it. So a lot of programming is honestly not stepping on existing code. My first programming assignment, they asked me to do something small and then said, your first job is to basically don't break the application. Your second job is to do this small enhancement. So my first order of priority was actually not to break things. So I think that that's something that to kind of carry with you through this semester when you see these larger projects. I'm going to ask that you modify the existing project in almost all cases, because there is a lot of work going into building these projects, and you end up spending a lot of time trying to recreate it if you don't start with the existing one, and just to modify it. So to circle back to the code itself, in the hints it basically says there are only two methods that you're going to be required to modify, and they're both within main activity fragment. And one of them is reset quiz. So this particular method starts setups and starts the next quiz, okay? What I want you to understand is that, 99% of the code you're not going to have to modify. So you might be asking yourself, do I need to rename all my variables so they don't say flags? You could. You're not required to, and if you do that, I'd do that last. Because refactoring code in that way can lead to, some programming errors. But if you do rename your variables, if you right click on them, you can use refactor to rename them. And refactoring allows you a more safe way to programmatically change all of those variable name references throughout the program. So you certainly can do that. You're not required to do that. Instead, we really just want to get this thing to work with our programming images. So a lot of this is going to be the same. You're getting the assets. That basically loads up everything in the assets folder, keeping in mind now our programming images are just in a single folder. So this area here, take a look at it. You're going to need to modify. Right now we're looping through a set of regions. We don't need to be doing that anymore. So, there's things like that. And I think also, what else did we have? Load next flag, I believe, was the other one. So kind of in the same vein, look through the steps in here. Almost everything is going to be the same. The things that are going to change is that we're no longer reading, in regions. I think that, let me take a peek in this Africa folder. Yes. Okay. In the Africa folder, every single image name is prefixed with Africa dash. Okay. So in your case, unless you've deliberately put programming language dash in front of all your image names, we don't have that, okay? We don't have that. We don't need to break off that piece of the name, and we're not using that to specify a particular folder. Everything's in the same folder. So, when you go through here, when you start seeing things where we're opening, files, and we're using a specific path that uses the folder name, you don't need to worry about that anymore. So there are some things in here, very minimal things that you will need to change so that you are referencing image from a single folder instead of multiple folders where you have a region name. So just think about that. There's very few changes here in the Java code, but I just kind of wanted to touch base kind of, at a higher level too, to talk about some of these larger projects and how to approach them. Don't be overwhelmed. There's a lot of code in here. You're not necessarily going to master every piece of it. You may not, but you do want to have a grasp of it. You do want to read the chapters. And a lot of what being a programmer is being able to navigate through thousands of lines of code. You may not know to the nitty-gritty detail, but you're able to navigate through them and understand at a high level what's going on so that you can hone in on what you need to change. So that's all. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am available through, you can definitely call me on my office phone. It'll get forwarded to me, but email is probably the best way to reach me right now. But please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.